right, so we got a decently big day out of New York football land. The New York Giants just yesterday benched Daniel Jones in favor of Tommy DeVito, and the New York Jets fired their general manager, Joe Douglas, this morning. Let's talk about it. So I want to start with the New York Jets, who have been just an objective dumpster fire this season. And Jets fans, I'm not piling on the hate here. I thought that this team was a legit Super Bowl contender coming into the season, but here we sit. They are 3-8, and they just fired their general manager, Joe Douglas. And I see a lot of the chatter online of, this isn't the move that needed to be made. You know, this is the Robert Saleh thing again. Aaron Rodgers is the problem. And while you're correct that Aaron Rodgers is the problem with the New York Jets at this point in time, the guy is just washed. He's not as mobile as he once was. He can't navigate the pocket. Anything that's intermediate to deep down the field, he's just not as accurate as he once was. Like, Aaron Rodgers is exactly what you would think a quarterback that is 40 fucking years old off of a torn Achilles would look like. Yes, 100% correct. Joe Douglas also had to go. 30-64 in 6 seasons with the New York Jets. The guy that was responsible for drafting Zach Wilson where they did. The guy that was responsible for putting together this roster. The guy that was responsible for handing the keys to Aaron Rodgers was Joe Douglas. This makes perfect sense to move on from this guy. The Jets should completely tear it all down. Honestly. They fired Saleh. They should fire this intermediate head coach. They should get rid of Joe Douglas. After this season, Aaron Rodgers should be gone. See what you can get pre-draft for Davante Adams. Like, rip the fucking cupboards off the walls. This whole thing needs a remodel. And it's the truth. The Jets need a hard, clean reset. I saw all the reports, this past week of Aaron Rodgers is going to play another season. If I'm the Jets, I'd say, I don't know who the fuck he's playing for, but it ain't us. He ain't going to be the Jets quarterback in 2025. That is how I would approach this situation. That is how I believe the Jets should be approaching this situation. But getting rid of Joe Douglas, this was an easy choice. And it wasn't just the Zach Wilson pick. This guy has been a historically bad drafter. Garrett Wilson was a good pick. I did enjoy that pick, but he's had miss after miss. Mekhi Becton, obviously he's been great in Philly, but bad for the Jets. Zach Wilson, bad for the Jets. Just continuous flops in the last 6 seasons. The best season that this guy had in 6 years was his first season as the Jets GM at 7-9. The best season on this GM's resume is a 7-9 season. Not even 500. 7-9, 2-14, 4-13, 7-10, 7-10, and a 3-8 start to what was believed by some. I'll even say believed by many to be a playoff roster, and believed by some, including myself, to be a Super Bowl level roster. Now, when that is said, how much blame can fully go on Joe Douglas? Maybe he had the same train of thought thinking that I had, but he's closer to the situation than me. I'm just some dude in my room with a fucking camera. You're out there each and every practice. You saw Aaron Rodgers last year. You were in the weeds building this roster. And when you're this terrible at your job over a 6-year span, the company almost has no choice but to fire you. Imagine this if you worked at Walmart every day, late to work, always stocking things in the wrong aisle. You're fired. You don't even make it 6 months, let alone 6 years of just fuck up after fuck up after fuck up. Joe Douglas is gone, and it was the right choice. I also think firing Robert Saleh was still the wrong choice. The defense objectively got worse after he left, but getting rid of Joe Douglas, no, it doesn't solve all your problems, but it is a step in the right direction for a Jets franchise that has been big stepping in the wrong direction year after year after year. There's a reason that this team is referred to as a poverty franchise, and it's partly because of the moves that Joe Douglas was making. And I get it. It's real life. This is some guy who's got a family, job. I hear you. The performance he was putting up as Jets general manager, unacceptable. Not good enough. And when you entrusted your job in the hands of Aaron Rodgers, a 38-year-old quarterback who couldn't make the playoffs with Green Bay and how well they're run and what they were providing him, and wouldn't take a pay cut to keep Davante Adams around in Green Bay, and then complained about the lack of wide receivers around him, and then decided him at 38 years old was the savior of your franchise, and then doubled down on that at 39 going on 40 years old post an Achilles injury, yeah, you kind of reap what you sow, and the Jets made the right decision getting rid of Joe Douglas. And from one New York team taking out the trash to another, the New York Giants have benched Daniel Jones. I believe we've seen him play his last snap as a Giants quarterback. This is a move that a lot of people who are kind of in the know of contracts saw coming. Daniel Jones has this clause in his contract where if he were to get hurt this year, next season's salary becomes fully guaranteed. If that doesn't happen, they can cut him this offseason for, I believe it's little to no, penalty against them cap-wise. So moving on from Daniel Jones is the obvious choice for the Giants. Benching him at this point, that way you don't have the money on the books for next year in a season that is lost, is obviously the right choice for the Giants. And to me, it feels like they're going with let's tank, because they went with Tommy DeVito over Drew Lock. And, I like DeVito as much as the next guy. I'm here for the memes and the agent and, the fun charade, but Drew Lock has clearly got more arm talent. The Giants have looked at Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward and maybe even a Jalen Milroe and said, we need one of those three guys. Let's try and get as low in this draft as possible and start over. And I think that's the completely right choice, because I do truthfully believe the Giants have a roster that's in a really good spot if they were to get a competent quarterback, a young explosive running back, a young emerging star wide receiver in Malik Neighbors, good other weapons around them, Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, Theo Johnson, an offensive line that when Andrew Thomas is healthy is decent. Yeah, it could use some work, but whose line couldn't at this point? A top 5 defensive line in terms of talent in the NFL, Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Thibodeau, Bobby Okereke in that front seven. They got to work on the secondary, but Turbin, that rookie that they drafted, the safety, he's been really, really solid. So they are building something well there. I still like Brian Daboll as the head coach. You get a Cam Ward in there, and they could have a Commanders-esque season as early as next year. I truthfully do feel that way. For Daniel Jones, his tenure in New York, yeah, it's an objective failure. The blame is to go to Jones, but it's also to go to the general manager in the front office that selected him in New York. Spending a top 10 pick on a quarterback from Duke that kind of everybody knew at the time was a reach, and everybody thought at the time was a reach. Yeah, this is what you get, a 24-45-1 record with one playoff win to show for it because of how spectacular Saquon Barkley and Brian Daboll were. And to make matters worse, you look at yourself 2 seasons ago, you had the choice to pay Daniel Jones or pay Saquon Barkley, and you doubled down on Daniel Jones and said, we're fine with losing Saquon. This is Daniel Jones' show. You were comfortable putting the keys to the future of the franchise in the hands of this guy just this past offseason, and now you're benching him. For that, I think general manager Joe Schoen's got to go. And I think very clearly Giants ownership not happy with him. We all have seen the Hard Knocks clips of him saying that he can't sleep at night if Saquon Barkley's an Eagle. Well, Saquon Barkley's an Eagle having an Offensive Player of the Year season, and Daniel Jones, the guy that Joe Schoen just doubled down on, got benched in favor of Tommy DeVito. That is where the Giants are at. I think the future is bright. And comparing the Jets and the Giants, whose future is brighter, I think there's at least more of a clear vision on the Giants side of things at this point in time. But this was something that we were just kind of counting down the days as to when is this going to happen? When does the Daniel Jones benching happen? A loss to Carolina and then into a bye week, the team decided, you know what, this is the time to bench Daniel Jones. And for Daniel Jones' future in the NFL, I actually think he'll be a quality backup. A mobile quarterback, a guy who has proven that in the right system, he can keep you around in games and make a play here or there. If he could get to be a backup in Minnesota for JJ McCarthy after this year. If Sam Darnold were to get some money, get with Kevin O'Connell, maybe he gets in a Matt LaFleur system. They move on from Malik Willis, backs up the Rams, Sean McVay. Like, if he gets with a good offensive minded head coach and in a backup role, I think you could see, some good play out of Daniel Jones. You look at Cooper Rush in Dallas. What's his record now as a backup? 5-3. Like, I think you could get there with a Daniel Jones. He's certainly more mobile, good size to him, but he just was never a starting caliber NFL quarterback as much as the Giants tried to shape him into one. All the juice was squeezed out of that orange 2 years ago when they made the playoffs with 9 wins and upset Minnesota on the road. That was the peak of Daniel Jones' career and will be the peak of his career. The Giants and Jets both making the right move, moving on today and yesterday, respectively, for both teams.